Hi everyone, welcome to this YouTube edition of MF Corner, where I try and explain some, otherwise complex terms for all of you, our viewers. And one of the requests that I got was to explain some of the new terms which the SEBI chairman had spoken about on Tuesday, and probably these are going to come into effect sometime soon. They're already with a committee that's deliberating on them. So I'm going to try and explain some of what was said by the SEBI chairman on Tuesday. Now, there are some liquidity risk management guidelines that he has said would be coming out for open-ended debt funds. Right, so what would this entail? Now, among many things, one is that there would be some sort of minimum liquid papers that all open-ended debt funds would have to hold. So for example, currently, liquid funds have this mandate that they must have minimum 20% in G-Secs. So will that be applied to the same level of all open-ended debt funds? So these are some of the things that are going to be deliberated. Now this particular point doesn't need an explanation, so I'm going to go through it very fast. The second one is stress test. Now stress test, at least इंडिया के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में जब तक फ्रैंकलिन टेम्पल्टन का केस नहीं हुआ था तब तक हमने स्ट्रेस टेस्ट का नाम काफ़ी सुना नहीं था फॉर म्यूचुअल फंड्स, राइट? बट सिंस देन देयर हैज़ बीन अ लॉट ऑफ कॉल्स अबाउट what is the status of stress tests in India. So currently, let me tell you, the status is that there is no mandatory stress test required that a mutual fund must undergo, right? It is up to the trustees, up to, there are just some loose guidelines that AMFI, that's the Association of Mutual Funds of India, has laid out. And it is up to the trustees and the management to decide, कब करना है, कहाँ करना है, कैसे करना है, नहीं करना है, what to do with the results. इसकी अभी कोई proper definition नहीं है. Now what SEBI has proposed, and this was also a news break that I had done in July earlier. So तब से ये मामला चल रहा है. अब सेबी क्या कह रहा है कि स्ट्रेस टेस्ट पहले होता क्या है? स्ट्रेस टेस्ट इज कि अगर आपके पास एक डेट फंड है, उसका पोर्टफोलियो है बॉन्ड्स का, राइट? तो उसमें से कितने बॉन्ड्स लिक्विड हैं, कितने बॉन्ड्स, अगर आपके ऊपर बहुत रिडेम्पशन प्रेशर आए, इफ देयर इज अ लॉट ऑफ रिडेम्पशन ऑन अ सर्टेन डे, हाउ मेनी बॉन्ड्स कैन यू सेल immediately to collect money for that redemption? How many bonds can you sell the next day? How many bonds can you sell the day? Basically, what is the liquidity of that portfolio? How soon can it be liquidated? How soon can you service redemption requests, and to what extent? That, can you service 40% redemptions? Can you service 20% redemptions? So these are all things that a stress test determines, and इसकी proper guidelines अब आएंगी कि आपको या हर महीने होना चाहिए. अगर आपके स्ट्रेस टेस्ट में निकला कि योर पोर्टफोलियो इज़ नॉट वेरी लिक्विड, तो फिर आपको किस तरह से चेंजेस करने पड़ेंगे. सो दिस इज ऑल व्हाट इज गोइंग टू कम रिगार्डिंग द स्ट्रेस टेस्ट, एंड देयर इज एन एक्सपर्ट कमिटी नाउ व्हिच इज वर्किंग ऑन द गाइडलाइंस, एंड दे आर गोइंग टू कम अप विद एग्जैक्टली हाउ इट शुड बी डन, द पीरियोडिसिटी, एंड ऑल्सो व्हाट विल happen should you fail your stress test. And ये काफ़ी common है for banks etc. Mutual funds के लिए ये फ़िलहाल अभी तक इसकी कोई proper guidelines नहीं है. The second thing where there is some confusion is the swing pricing. Now for India, this is going to be a very, very new concept if it comes. Now what does swing pricing mean? Sorry, मैं फिर फ्रैंकलिन टेम्पल्टन का केस लेने वाली हूँ, बिकॉज काफ़ी जो रिफॉर्म्स हैं, चेंजेस हैं, वो उसी के बिना पर हो रहे हैं. It's on the basis of that case that a lot of these reforms are going to come through. So I'm going to go back to it. What happened with Franklin Templeton was that they just were faced with so many redemptions that they couldn't practically meet all of them. They couldn't cash out everybody who wanted to go out. They borrowed from banks. SEBI says कि आप 20% of your AUM, of that scheme's AUM, you can borrow. Franklin went in excess of 30% in a few of their schemes. So basically swing pricing में क्या हुआ कि जितने भी investors को पता चला कि फ्रैंकलिन के पास शायद ऐसे बॉन्ड्स हैं जो वो जल्दी नहीं सेल कर पाएंगे, या शायद उन कंपनीज में कोई प्रॉब्लम है, तो ऐसे जो savvy investors थे उन्होंने कहा चलो मैं अपना पैसा निकाल लेता हूँ. धीरे धीरे करके कभी 1000 करोड़, 2000 करोड़. Now these are large numbers for schemes to fulfill, right? So the scheme fund manager may not have money to honor all of these redemptions. Still, the outgoing people got that day's NAV, right? Now today, even if I want to take out say 400-500 crores of my money in a particular scheme, I will still get today's NAV. मुझे आज की NAV मिलेगी. लेकिन जो दूसरे लोग हैं जिन्होंने रिडेम्पशन रिक्वेस्ट नहीं डाली है, उनके ऊपर फर्क पड़ेगा. बिकॉज अगर बहुत रिडेम्पशन रिक्वेस्ट आती है तो वो AMC क्या करेगा कि जो बॉन्ड बिक सकता है उसको सबसे पहले बेचेगा. द मोस्ट सेलेबल एसेट विल बी सोल्ड ऑफ फर्स्ट. What is left for the people who are remaining in this scheme? The bonds which are not easily saleable, or even the bonds which are saleable. Suppose a bond could fetch 100 rupees in a good market, but now when everybody knows that the fund manager is selling in distress, perhaps he's getting only 90 rupees or 80 rupees. And yet the person because of whom this distress sale is happening, the person who has asked for redemption, is still getting his full NAV. The markdown of these bonds or the remaining bonds or the cut in the NAV is being dealt with or being left for the investors who are remaining in this scheme. So now what SEBI is saying is that should we have this concept of swing pricing? Swing pricing का क्या मतलब है कि अगर बहुत सारी redemption requests आती है एक दिन पे, और because of the heightened number of redemption requests, if there has to be a forced sale of bonds, and if that affects the price that asset could have yielded, then the outgoing investor will also have to take that hit in their NAV, right? तो इसका क्या मतलब है कि अगर बहुत सारी redemption request एक दिन आती है, उसकी वजह से अगर वो फंड मैनेजर को कोई बॉन्ड्स ऐसे बेचने पड़ रहे हैं जिसकी वजह से NAV पे इम्पैक्ट आ सकता है या उस बॉन्ड की पूरी वैल्यू रियलाइज नहीं होगी, तो जो इन्वेस्टर बाहर जा रहा है, जो इन्वेस्टर बेच के बाहर जा रहा है, रिडेम्पशन का रिक्वेस्ट दे रहा है, उसको भी अपनी NAV में इसका हिट लेना पड़ेगा. इसका मतलब है कि वो NAV रिडेम्पशन रिक्वेस्ट की वजह से स्विंग हो सकती है, राइट? सो इसका मतलब है कि बस जो रिमेनिंग इन्वेस्टर्स हैं, जो वो इन्वेस्टर्स हैं जो आपसे लॉयल हैं, जो आपके स्कीम से बाहर नहीं जा रहे हैं, जिनमें अभी भी फंड मैनेजर में फेथ है या शायद उन्हें पता नहीं हो कि सिचुएशन कैसे डेवलप हो रही है, दे शुड नॉट बी द ओनली इन्वेस्टर्स लेफ्ट टू टेक द हिट of heightened redemptions, and which have led to crash or whatever the impact of the sale of their bonds. So that is called swing pricing. I hope ये काफ़ी complex phenomena है और इसका formula etc है, तो मैं उसमें नहीं जाना चाहती हूँ. And in fact अभी SEBI ने clarify भी नहीं किया है कि कैसे वो formula follow होगा. So this is just a very simple way of explaining what is swing pricing. Now the other thing that has been proposed is gating of redemptions. Again ये एक learning है जो फ्रैंकलिन केस से शायद आई है, is कि अगर बहुत सारी redemption requests आती हैं, suddenly a fund is faced with very very heavy redemptions, the fund manager might have the choice to gate the redemptions, which means कि there will be some sort of a formula because through which some pro rata allotment will be done, right? Or rather pro rata redemption will be done, that if there are too many redemptions suddenly, so if I have asked for redemption of say 1,000 units, maybe I will get redemption only on 500 units, right? So at 50% there will be a gate, or at 60% there will be a gate. I mean, this is up to the committee to decide what is an appropriate number, but this is essentially what gating means. Ke, suddenly if there is an influx of people trying to, or rather an outflow from the scheme, it could be gated, literally gated, or stopped at a certain level so that everybody gets an equitable exit. So these are some of the new factors for the open-ended debt schemes. Iske alawa, I want to just take a moment to address one more issue which the SEBI chairman has spoken about, which is backstopping. Now this is slightly a complex story, but again this has been in the works since July. I had this news break in July, which has now been confirmed, that there is a working group which is considering whether or not backstopping should be implemented. Now what is backstopping? This means that, again, Franklin case, say, if I can take an example, is that they had bonds, they didn't have buyers for those bonds, or they couldn't find buyers for those bonds. And अगर market में ऐसा फैल भी जाता है कि कोई बेचना चाहता है bonds, तो शायद people try to also drive down those prices. So therefore you're not able to realize the full value or a good value of your bond. So now what SEBI is asked this working group to consider is that क्या हम ऐसा एक fund बना सकते हैं जिसमें अगर कोई AMC को ऐसी प्रॉब्लम हो कि उन्हें बॉन्ड्स बेचने हैं, बायर नहीं मिल रहा है या बायर है प्राइस नहीं मिल रहा है, तो क्या ये जो एक पूल है, can they buy those bonds of the AMC, sell them when the time is good or when the market is better, or even hold them to maturity? Right, so this is what backstopping would be, that there would be a backstop that you wouldn't have to actually drive down the value of your bond seriously. Now, one of the things that is being explored by this working group is that who is going to finance this, right? Some money has to be available to buy these bonds. So of course, AMCs will have to pay a certain percentage according to the AUM. So maybe 1% of the AUM, 2% of their AUM, whatever is decided. But it still needs a larger corpus for this entity to sustain. So right now, what I understand from my sources is that where things are stuck is that the initial seed capital has to be provided either by the government or the Reserve Bank. Now, what is being talked about, what seems like a good number according to insiders is, GSECs worth 1 lakh crores, which should be held by this entity, which could be governed by AMFI or set up by AMFI or come under the wing of AMFI. And this 1 lakh crore worth of GSECs plus the money that has been given as a certain percentage of AUM by the mutual funds is what would be the corpus that this entity would have. If suppose me as a fund manager find that आज मुझे ये bond बेचना है, नहीं मिल रहा है buyer, I can go to this facility. They will buy my bond, either sell it later or hold it to maturity. The other problem with this is that there could be some fund managers who may never want to go to the secondary market because they say, what, this is an easy way out. तो उसका भी एक हल निकाला गया है कि according to AUM there will be a cap. तो ऐसा नहीं है कि अगर आज एक AMC डिस्ट्रेस में है और उन्हें बॉन्ड्स बेचने पड़ रहे हैं, तो ऐसा नहीं हो सकता कि वो पूरा फंड यूटिलाइज कर लें. जितनी उनकी AUM है उसके हिसाब से कोई कैप होगी कि आप इस फंड में इतने ही परसेंटेज ऑफ बॉन्ड्स बेच सकते हैं. ये नहीं कि आप पूरा जितना आपको बॉन्ड्स बेचने हैं सब आप इस एंटिटी को भेजते हैं. तो कुछ चीज़ें डिसाइड हो चुकी हैं, कुछ चीज़ें जैसे कि इनिशियल सीड मनी कहाँ से आएगा have not yet been decided. So this is where it's stuck. So this is something that SEBI is deliberating on still. It is not yet a done deal, unlike the liquidity risk management framework, which SEBI has asked them to submit the final recommendations. तो ये कुछ चीज़ें हैं जो Tuesday को SEBI chairman की speech से आई हैं, and I hope कि I have been able to help you understand the meanings of all of these terms. Thank you very much for watching. Do send me your comments below, and I look forward to reading all of them. Thanks very much.